Hello, Embird users. Lisa WeQuilt here with another Embird tutorial. So, an FCM file is basically Brother's proprietary vector format, just like Embird has their EOFs in Studio. You know, an EOF is Embird's proprietary vector format. Every software has their own proprietary vector format. Wilcom and Hatch, their proprietary vector format is EMB, as in boy. So the FCM is this Brother Scan and Cut vector format. So, but what's interesting is Embird will open an FCM file. Now, this bird was an FCM file, and I just did file open, you know, just like I would any PES or JEF or what have you. And there it was. It came in as, you know, a stitch file. I'll show it to you. Bird FCM large. Here's the FC. That was one that I made an outline on. Let's see. Okay, here's the original. Okay, that's what you're seeing here. And it's an FCM. And, you know, I just hit OK. And lo and behold, there it is. It comes in as just a stitch file. So all of these stitches that you see, if this were on the Brothers Scan and Cut, these would be cut out. You know, this is a very intricate cut file. And it really would be kind of hard to line it up correctly, you know, to stitch over what's cut. Because if you look at it, you say, okay, this part here, let's see if I can, I'll start with the big part. So this big part, all of this, and then it winds in, all of that gets lifted out so that you're left with the curly cues, you know, for this section, and so on. For over here, each of these is cut out. So you're left with, you know, this background. But when you open it up in Embird, all of those cutout lines come in as stitch lines. So it's kind of cool. Like I could turn this bird into an applique easy by just cutting around the outside of it. And that's what I did when I opened it. Let's get back to that one I just had open. Final Jeff. So that's what I did with this one. I opened up the Brother FCM file and I created a blanket stitch around it, and then I also created a placement stitch around it. Now, this was kind of easy because it's not a layered applique. So my instructions here are basically just for this, you know, creating your blanket stitch around the outside. Here, on the other hand, is an example of a very layered applique project that I got on Brothers Canvas workspace. And they have a couple of free quilting appliques. Not that many for quilting, but they do have a few. And these shapes here, these are like the original FCM shapes that came in when I did file open, and I opened these FCM shapes. So you could see them. I have them all grouped here. But I had to take these into studio and perfect them because they just weren't perfect enough for me. If I zoom in on them, you can kind of see that they're not all exactly the same. They're slightly irregular. This one wasn't bad, but it was a little irregular. Um, these weren't bad either, but I still, when I brought them into studio, I had to edit them because when you bring something into studio, it's basically you right click on the object, edit stitch file in studio, you're bringing into studio a stitch file. So when it comes into studio, it may not be perfect, you know, like you could see these corners even aren't the same. So there were little things like that. So I edited every one of these in studio. And well, not every one, I take that back. If there's four of them, like for these four, I only edited one and then copied and pasted it, of course. Same thing with, you know, each of these little ones. This this one I kind of did just one side, and then once I did this side, then I mirrored it and did this side, and then I took that object and rotated it, you know, duplicate. And same thing with this one. And then these, of course, I just did one, and I actually only did one side and mirrored it for the other one. So it wasn't that bad, but it did take me a long time, and I have like a several hour video that I don't even think anybody would want to sit through, but I do have it. I just don't want to edit it because it's too long. But so this is what I ended up with. So you know, it's a multi-layered. Now, the fill stitches that you see are representing fabric, and then the applique stitches, you know, those were all like, they look good now. That's because I converted the applique stitches in studio into like manual stitches, as if you were an editor, because I had to move some of these little jutting out blanket stitches. You know, they were just rogue, you know, especially when you get to points like this here. This wasn't pointing in, it was like pointing out that way. You know what I mean? So you had to like really go through every part of the design, and that's what happens when you have a blanket stitch. But it's so worth it. I just love a blanket stitch more so than a satin, especially on a quilt, you know, because this, you're going to see the back of it. You're going to see stitches on the back, and you don't want to see satin stitches on the back. And I like to attach this with the blanket stitch after the quilt top is pieced together. So the quilt top is pieced together, then I layer it with the batting, the backing, you know, the quilt top, the batting, and the backing. I hoop that, and then this gets stitched on top. That way, these applique stitches serve also as your quilting around it. So you don't have to go around with your long arm and quilt around it then, because this is already tacking it down and making this, you know, a little bit puff up, a little bit here, a little bit here. So, but this was quite involved, quite involved. but it is doable. And of course, you don't have to do your appliques like this. Now, I'll show you where I got this FCM file. These FCM files are actually, this came in 3 sets. So 1, 2, and then this came in another FCM file. So there were 3 FCM files, but this is where I got it. And this is the Canvas Workspace.brother.com. And if you go in the search box, you can see all the headings. So I just chose the quilting one, and this is the Hawaiian quilt. See, there's only 2 have come up for quilting, but if you click on Applique, I think you get a little bit more. So I downloaded this one. These are all free. I downloaded this one. So these 2 I have, and this one. I might have downloaded these 2, I'm not sure. And this is a cup here. So when you click on it, I should click on one that I didn't get yet. Let's see this applique pillow. Okay, so this shows you the parts. So, oh, okay, so the A is an applique that you cut out. So this is a layered applique. This is only 2 layers. I should have done this one. But, you know, you don't use the A, you use a different letter. But, so these are just showing you your 2 parts, but then as you scroll down, this is how you download them. So you download all your parts here, and you just click on it, and it goes up, and you go to your downloads folder on your computer. This one has a YouTube video, so it's right on YouTube. And then it also has written PDF instructions. So you click on the PDF instructions, and it opens up in Adobe on the, in Google. You can't really edit it all. Your editing is grayed out. But if you print it, I'll just scroll through the instructions first. So it tells you everything that you have to do, and then even for your pillow. So that's kind of nice, the overlap. I always make my overlaps really big overlap, and then I can barely get the pillow in. But if you want to be able to use your editing features on your Adobe Reader that say you have downloaded on your computer, you can click the print button and print it. And when you print it, and what is this called? Let me see. This is called the Applique Pillow. Microsoft Print to PDF, print. And I'll put it in, I got a folder, FCM's Brother, new folder, pillow, applique, enter, and instructions, pillow, applique. And then if I go and open that in my, here's my Adobe Reader. See, Adobe Reader on my computer, this is a free program. You still get this toolkit. So I can type something, I can click that, and, type in whatever. This is the Hawaiian block with fill, so, but anyways, I would open it from here, or I can open it from Explorer, and FCM's Brother, here's pillow applique instructions, and so now I can edit it if I want. I can add to it. It's like what I was doing was I was going back to Canvas workspace, and you could right click on this maybe to get the link. No. So if I click on it and it takes me to the YouTube video, I click up in the URL. Control A, I copy the URL, Control C up at the top, and I go back to Adobe Reader. I click on this type text and I just click, and then Control V for pasting. And so now move it. There's the URL, and I'll just click Save. And it should save it in the same place. It never shows me the whole thing. Stitch files. I'm sure it's going to save in there, but I'll just save there, and there it is. It's saving in the same spot. Okay, and I'll just click save, replace it, yes. And so, you know, here's it's only a 2-minute video, you know, it's very short, but you see how she's attaching it by hand with the sewing machine. You know, they're just showing you how to cut it. That's it. So, you know, we want to embroider it, right? So, anyways, that's what you can do. You can go on the Canvas workspace and you can get some free ones. If I go back, let's see, if I go back, click here, it takes me back to the search. So if I click Applique, sewing, and because most of them are all paper and other types of crafts. And where was the quilting? And those were the 3 I chose. And there aren't that many. They say there's over 100 free ones, but there aren't that many for sewing. And even those are like 3-dimensional, a lot of them. And so that's it for sewing. That's adorable. So that would be cute to put on. And that would be really fun to applique around. But, you know, you'd have all these little pieces. But remember, if I were to open up the FCM file for, say, this one, okay, that's what you're getting, these as a cut file. They open up in Embird as stitches. So you could basically just stitch it, just like I was going to do with the bird applique that I'm going to show you how to do. You know, I could just stitch the rows and then make an applique around it. Meaning, large bird, final. Okay. So it would come in like this. You know, the rose is going to come in with stitches, and then I could make an applique around it. So that's what this tutorial is going to be about, doing it on this bird. Okay, so yeah, maybe I will download that rose. I'll leave it up here on my desktop, and I'll do it when I'm done. That'll be fun. All right, back to the video. Let me separate these colors, and I'll zoom in. So the orange is my placement stitch, and the black here is my blanket stitch. And then from the blanket stitch, I made the cut file, you know, by just right clicking, save cutting file, and I saved it as an FCM, inflate it like 1.5 mils, and so on. So that's a summary of how I made this. And of course, there's so many ways that you can do this with Embird. We'll just do the blanket stitch. So, so anyways, I'll just start out with just the bird. So I'll delete, hold Control, select these two, and just delete them. And actually, I'll just start new. I'll just start new, don't save. And I'll open up the bird if I can find it now. So I'll open up the FCM file. Okay, so Brother Designs, I'll just go up here to the folder. So here it is as an FCM. Oh, that's the cut file. Okay. Okay, here it is as an FCM. So this was taken probably from the Brother, one of the Brother websites or something. I'm not sure where I got this, but I'll open it. And like I said, you know, it just comes in as a regular file. And this one is actually bigger than my hoop. I'm going to shrink it. And I might, just to make it more realistic, because if you look, it's already 203 high. My hoop is only 200. So I'll just go to the sizing button here, and I'll make it like 180, and I'll click stitch density and keep original fill pattern. Outlines, we'll leave it at, we'll make it 2 mils, and I'll just click OK. Okay, so it's shrunk down here. It still looks okay, I guess. Let's see. I mean, it's okay. So I'll just save this now as, you can't save them as an FCM, but I'll just save it in my format as a Jeff, Bird, Jeff. 180 by 180, something like that. So, and I'll click up here to view it. And, you know, it really doesn't look that great, but when I zoom in, it looks a little better. So we'll just kind of go with that. I am interrupting this video just for a moment because I wanted to let you know that you can also resize like this stitch file in Studio, and that's what I ended up doing because I just edited everything on it in Studio. If I zoom in a little bit closer, you'll see it just looks better. It could still use some work, but in Studio, you know, you're working with the vector objects, so when you resize it, yes, you were resizing a stitch file turned into a vector file, but it's just a little bit better, and then you can edit that vector file. Now it looks like I need to edit this. You know, there's still some areas that could use some work, but all in all, like, it looks a lot better. So the rest of the video is, you know, it's not going to look as nice. Like over here, you'll notice, and just everywhere, a lot of these swirls. And like I said, it still needs some work and through there. But it is a lot nicer now. And all I did was you know, on the bird that was here, I just right clicked, edit stitch file in Studio. Once you get into Studio, you, this is like the original that I shrunk. But once you get into Studio, you do convert manual stitches to connection, and then you do convert again, connection to outline, and then you end up with these outline stitches. They're grouped now, but that's how you'd want to, that's really the best way to resize it. Something that's all outlines is easy then to edit. So I just wanted to let you know that it just looks a lot better than it did, because you know resizing is just really hard if you're working with a stitch file. Okay, back to the video. The first thing you want to do is you want to just create your blanket stitch. So we'll select this design, and you can see it's got lots of items attached to it, and we're going to have it selected and go into Insert, Effect. We're going to use Plate, and I know that sounds strange, but that's kind of a workaround, because by selecting Plate, we can get our parameter window to show up, the same parameter window that would show up as if you were in Studio. And I'll show you what I mean. So we'll inflate it 5 mils because we want our applique to be bigger, of course. Ignore cavity, click OK. And this is where you click Fill Outline. We're not going to use the fill portion. We're going to delete it later. But this is the choice that allows the Studio type parameter window to show up. So here it is, and see you have the fill and the outline. So we're just going to do the outline. I already had the blanket stitch selected, and this is what I changed my params to: width of 5 and minimum length 4 and 4. That's these little stitches. So they'll be 4 mils apart. You could make it 3 if you want, 3 and 3. The width is this width here. So, and I'll just click OK. And so you can see, here's our original down here. Let's see. This might be, let me separate these. So I always get confused which is which. Okay. So if I hide that one, okay. So this one down here is the original, and the two that were made up here are the fill and the outline. So let me undo that just so you could see it again. So this is what was created. It was created above these stitches here. So with this, again, I'm just going to separate them. And here's the fill, and I'm just going to delete it with the trash can or your delete key. When the magnifier is selected, it won't delete. So click the selection arrow and then delete. And then I'm just going to make this black like I did before. And then you can see that you've got a lot of wayward stitches, and we can, you know, fix them here with points, excuse me, with points editing mode. For instance, we'll go into Stitches View, and I'll just use my magnifier and say, you know, come down here, and then hit points editing mode, and then just click, and then click that. And, you can come around and do that. And so I won't go through all of them, but just know, and this here is your tie. So you may want to fix that a little better. And, and so on and so on. And just so you know, all of the nodes are like showing in points editing mode here. And that's because when I clicked points editing mode, I didn't have anything selected over here. But just know that if I would have just selected, say, the outline and then went to points editing mode, it would have just selected those. But you want to click outside and then click on one. It looks like that might be the tie, because if I click on it, you'll see that there's $11.99. If I go from $11.90, hit enter, and then zoom to that. Okay, so that is up there. So that wasn't a tie. My tie is up here. So let's go back to that spot. I'm just clicking the bird now. Zoom to selected. And I'll use my magnifier. Where was that I saw that? The stitches that crossed each other. Hold my right mouse to pan. There it is there. So I'll click the outline. I'll click points editing mode. And this time you see, even though I clicked the outline, you don't see any nodes. Well, that's because when I clicked the outline, the items weren't selected at the bottom. So there's a lot of little tricks. So I'll select the item at the bottom, then click points editing mode. They all get selected. So you click outside to unselect. And then I can go in here. Let me just zoom in. Points editing mode. Now, of course, the blue is selected. It's okay. But I'm going to fix this mess. There should only be 3 nodes here. So I'm not sure what happened. I'm just going to start deleting some nodes. Yeah. These are like doubled. I could have left them, but I'm not going to. Let's just see if that's okay. I'm going to delete that. Delete that one. Okay, let's just click on it. We still only have 1 item, so we're okay. Let's go back to points editing mode. I'm going to save this as file, save as Jeff, because I use Jeff, even though I'm doing a PES. I guess I'll save it as a PES since this is like an FCM. But I mean, you can apply this to anything. Anytime you bring in a design, you can do this to make it into an applique. So, but I'll save it as a PES instead. Okay. Select only one format, so then it'll select just the PES. Bird 180 by 180 PES. I should have put the word applique after it. The hoop. Okay. So it would obviously be a different hoop, but that's okay. I'm going to just, whoops, they're all selected. Control Z, click outside, click this one, and I'm just going to move it so it looks more even. And if you zoom in, you can see there now I can see the little blocks, but I can't see how far I want to move it. It's okay. I don't need that. I'll go back to points editing mode just to make it more even. They'll kind of snap in better if you're zoomed in. They'll snap to those like blocks. And I'll just zoom out. And so you can go around and, fix all of these. Like this is where the tie is. So, I don't know. I'll leave that like that. I'll maybe move that a little bit, you know. So you'd want to go around and fix everything. And this is, if you were doing this in studio, you would be doing probably the same thing with the blanket stitch, because sometimes the blanket stitch doesn't come in exactly the way you want it to. And you have to fix some of these rogue stitches. I'm using my right mouse. I'm holding it down and just panning. So here's another one where I'd probably just, I'll delete all of these. And then all of these in here, you'd have to fix as well. So I'll let those go, but you kind of get the idea. If I do zoom to selected, and I'll go back into 3D, so it looks a little better. I've got stitches here that I'd have to fix as well. But that would be your blanket stitch. So now we'll make the placement stitch for when we're, going to lay down our applique fabric. So we select this blanket stitch and we click Insert, Effect, Contour, and we're going to inflate it because we want our placement to be just outside of the blanket stitch, because we want to remove the placement stitch later. I like to do it this way so that I could see the placement stitch, and I make the stitch length really long, so it's more like a basting stitch. So, but we're only going to inflate it like 1.5 mils. So 1.5 mils in editor means it'll be 1.5 on each edge. Now in studio, if we wanted to expand it to be 1.5 on each edge, we would expand it 3 mils instead of 1.5. So just so you know, that's the difference between editor and studio. So we're going to inflate it 1.5 here in editor, ignore cavity, click OK. And since this is going to be a basting stitch, we'll make it like 4 or 5 mils. And one layer, single stitch, OK. And so that's our placement stitch, and it comes in above whatever we selected. So let's click on it, double click the color, I'll make it orange. So that's my placement stitch. So now you say, well, what about our cut file? Well, for the cut file, believe it or not, we can just select this this blanket stitch, because the stitches are going inward, so we can make our cut file off of that. So to do that, Lorna explained how to do that on Facebook. You right click on the color block and you do, there's so many ways you can do this, but we're going to do save cutting file, and we'll just save it as, however you need to, as an FCM or SVG. I believe this is for wood, DXF. So we'll click. Do you want to automatically close contours? Well, yes. For this, since it is a cut file and we're going off the blanket stitch, we do want to inflate it because of your blade. And so depending how thick your blade is, 1.5 might be good, because remember, we want the line part of our blanket stitch to ride on the fabric that's, you know, the main fabric. You know, we want it to ride just outside the applique fabric. So you might have to experiment with your blade and whatnot and what you need for an inflate, but start with 1.5 and then click OK. And then that just saves it as this separate, you know, FCM, DXF, or SVG. I'll just click FCM if you have a brother scan and cut or what have you. So, or you can select probably SVG. I think they take SVGs as well. And if you have a Cricut maker, you'd select SVG and so on. So, but I'll just select FCM, but I'll put down, instead of bird, I'll put bird cut. So then I'll click save. That's like saved behind the scenes. So you have your cut file. So nothing got added here or anything. You just saved it as a cut file. And, you know, if I were to bring it in, let's just say I want to merge it in, just so you could see it, I can merge it in because it's an FCM. Let's see. So there it is there. You could see it if you want to look at it. So it came in, actually, since I merged it, it came in below. So here it is here. I'm just going to make it like, I don't know, pink. Okay. And so, you know, that's the cut file, and that's what it looks like, you know, as a stitch file. That's what it looks like. Let me hide the orange one. You know, it doesn't look great, but as a cut file, it's going to be more like a vector file. Now, here's the thing. If you go into Stitches View, you'll see it's not going to cut that great. That's why it is better to make your cut file in Studio, because in Studio, it goes off of, you know, the vector shape. So that's why a lot of people like to make their cut file in Studio instead of here in Editor. But just know that you can. You know, you might not notice it that much, but if you're doing a blanket stitch, you're going to see the edge. So you may want to make your cut file in Studio. If you were doing a satin stitch, then yeah, doing it in Editor is probably acceptable to you. So let me just click on this and hit select and delete it for now. So I mean, technically, yes, you could be done now because you have your cut file, you have your placement stitch, and you have your blanket stitch. Now look at this placement stitch. Even though I told to make it 5 mils, I have a couple here that are bigger. I can possibly go into this, right click, set density or pattern, and I can specify this as, say, 5 mils. Click OK. It didn't change it. It didn't change this. So that's another thing, you know, if you do everything in Studio, these will be exactly 5 mils, but it wasn't able to do that. Hey guys, I'm interrupting this video just to give you a little tip. If you did want to like get rid of some of these tiny stitches here on your placement outline, there is a way you can do that easily in Editor. Just know that by doing it this way, you're probably going to end up deleting your tie-ons and tie-offs, but for a placement stitch, that's also kind of a good thing because then you don't have to worry about taking out your tie-ons. You know that you'll be removing this placement stitch anyways. And even if you did want to keep those tie-ons, you could always add them back in, and I'll show you that as well. So now my tie-ons are up here, and the reason I know that is, and I'll show you an easy way. I'm just gonna like zoom out. Whoops, it's still going into my tie-on. Let me click this and I'll zoom to selected. Okay. But now I'll click on the orange one, and it's, if I click on the first item, that's the outline that's around it. It's highlighted in green. This is the little piece inside that I really don't need, but at any rate, so if I want to see where my tie-on is, I would come up here. So it's 301 stitches long with this item or object, however you want to look at it. These are the items. This is the object that contains these items. But this particular item is 301 stitches long. So from 1 to 10, the tie-on should be in there somewhere. So hit enter. And it's highlighted in green, and you may not see it. I can see it. It's up there. But if you don't see it, you just click this, zoom to selected, and it zooms to it. And if you want to zoom out a little, because that's a little too close, you know, you could zoom out. And then you'll want to click the points editing mode. But let's go into Stitches View first. Stitches View, there it is there. And now I'll click the points editing mode. And the 1 through 10 stitches are all selected, so click outside to deselect, and then just click anywhere in there. That's 6 to 7, so I'll just count the right hand number. I'll hold Shift Tab to get back to number 1. So I'm holding down Shift and I'll hit Tab. See, I'm 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now I'm 1 to 1. So 1 to 1 is just a stitch penetration, and then if I hit tab, it stays in the same spot. Embird always does that. It's most embroidery machines have 2 stitch penetrations in the same spot. And then if I hit again, it starts its tie. 3, 4, 5, 6. Then it starts to stitch. Okay. So we'll lose this when I show you my method. We're going to lose the ties, both the tie on and the tie off. That's probably right here. So, and again, if you wanted to see the tie off, click on the object, click on the item, items ending at 301. So you put in, say, 290, hit enter. 290 to 301 is highlighted in green over here. Going to 3D so you could see it. Okay, you would, you know, if you didn't see it, you'd zoom to it, go into Stitches View, and then click Points Editing Mode. And again, here's your ties right here. So I click here and then hit Tab, 7 and 7, 98, 99. Now it's making its tie, and then it jumps down here. So we have ties. I'll click the bird, the black blanket stitch, and zoom to selected. We have ties, but we're gonna actually lose them when I show you this method. So I'm just gonna zoom in just a little bit, just so you could see the teeny tiny stitches that we're going to get rid of, and then these will of course be gone as well. So I'll hit the select button just to be sure we're good. And we'll click the object, right click, stitches, tidy up small stitches. And if you put in like 2.5, that should still keep the integrity of the design, you know, because we want it to bend in where it's supposed to. I already tested this offline, and when I put in 3.0, I lost this indentation here for this placement stitch. I'll show you what I mean. See, it's gone. Control C. So 2.5 seemed to work. Tidy up small stitches. 2.5. Click OK. And now all those tiny stitches are gone everywhere. You know, the whole design is much better. So those will be easy to take out. But we lost our tie-ons because, of course, they're smaller than 2.5. So now I only have 201 stitches, whereas before I had 301. So, you know, the stitches are longer, so we don't need as many. But if I go 1 to 10 now, you'll see, hit enter, it's highlighting here, zoom to selected, stitches view, points editing mode. You know, if I click outside to deselect and click, I'm on 2 to 3, shift tab, okay, 1 to 1, 1 to 2, 3, 4, there's no tie on, and then there's also no tie off. So to fix that, you just, if you did want ties, I don't want ties on this, but you may, because you want to make sure that your placement stitch catches, you know. But here's how you can add them back, and this is good too because you can tell Embird how many you want. So you right click, insert tie-ons, and now you could tell it how many you want. Well, since this is a placement stitch, I don't want that many because it's going to be too hard to remove. So I'm just going to say 2. I think if I said 1, it doesn't let me. Yeah. So this is the lowest I can get. And I'll just click OK. And now I've got 203 stitches. And here's the thing. I did have 201 stitches. So by it only putting, you know, the 2 more stitches in, it only put a tie on. It didn't put a tie off. But if you look at the other item of this object, this item here, it did say 22, and now it says 26. If I do undo, Control Z, okay, it did say 22 stitches. This one said 201, and I redo, and this other item down below says 26. That's, let me zoom to selected, 3D, this one. So this one, you know, it was 22 to 26, so it got 4 more stitches, 2 tie-ons, and 2 tie-offs, and we can even look at them and see and verify it. This starts at 205. We could go 205 to 210. And there it is there. We can go into stitches view, points editing mode. There's our 2 tie-ons. If I click outside, click here, shift tab. Okay. Okay, as soon as I did shift tab, I saw this highlight. That means if I hit shift tab one more time, it's going to shoot up. See, it shoots back up there, and I'll hit tab and come back down here. Okay, so, and then if I hit tab again, it stays in the same spot, and now I start counting. 1, 2, and then it jumps. So that's 2 tie-ons. If I click again and click on here, it's ending at 230. So if I go to say 225 to 230, hit enter, It's in green here. Okay, zoom to selected. It zooms way in. And if I go into stitches view, points editing mode, there's my tie off. So if I click outside and say click here and go tab, whoops, tab, I'm at 228, 229, and then it started its tie off. So that's 1, 2, and then it jumped. It jumped back to the beginning of the object, you know, 1 to 1 of this object. So I mean, I have a tie on and a tie off on this item, but on this item, I don't. And so you may think, well, is it, and I'll show you. I don't know if I showed you or not. On this item, it's 203. So if I go from, you know, 200 or even 195, enter, zoom to selected, you know, there it is there, stitches, points editing mode. You could see this is the ending here. There's no ties. If I click outside and click here, I'm at 200, tab, 201, 202, 203, 204 is the beginning of the jump, and it's going to jump. So it didn't make a tie off on that item. And you may think, well, is it because it's like with, you know, it's an item that's within a list of items here, and it's like the first item, so they only put the tie off on the last item. So then I was like, okay, well, let's undo all the ties. So we're back to no ties. And let's separate these items, separate all items. So now it's its own object, right? It's its own item. And I'll just go up 1 to 10, hit enter, zoom to selected. You can see it there. Okay. And, you know, I'll click on it. I'll even click down here. If I right click, insert tie on offs, and say 2, this still only says 203. I'll hit OK. See, it only says 203. It only gave me the 2 tie-ons. It didn't give me any tie-offs. And I don't know why that's happening. But if it does happen, you can, there's several things you can do. You can, and I found this to be interesting. You can just select it again, and then whether it's with this item or not, let's see, if I group it back up, okay, it's got 203 and this one has 23. I think it has 23 instead of 22 because I separated them. So let me just go back, okay, to where they were joined. And again, I'll do the insert ties 2. So I got tie on and tie offs on the smaller item, but on this one I only got a tie on. And watch these numbers. If I do this again and I do right click, insert tie on offs, and I up it to say 4 and click OK. Now the only one that changed was this one. It went from 203 to 207. That means it got 4 ties. Well, where are those ties? Well, I found that they're at the end of this first item. So these didn't change. And I found that so interesting. So I'm still not sure why it's doing that, but just make sure that you check your ties when you do insert your ties. So, and I'll show you that there are 4 ties at the end of this item. So I clicked on it. It's 1 to 207. I'll just go say 200 to 207. Zoom to selected. In 3D, there they are there. I'll zoom out. And I'll go back into Stitches View and Points Editing Mode, and there's our ties. And if I click outside to deselect, click there, tab, tab. Okay, I'm on 203, and if I tab again, it stays there, and now I start counting. Because, once it makes 2 stitch penetrations in the same spot, then you start counting your ties. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's my 4 ties. And if I go to the beginning, it's still got those 2 ties in it. 1 to 10, hit enter. I'm right there already. Okay, click outside, click here, shift tab. When I'm at 1 to 1, I hit tab, I stay there, I start counting. 1, 2, and then it starts stitching. So why does it do that? I don't know. But if I undo, and I'm back to no ties now, this is where I remember I had like 300 stitches up here when I had all those tiny stitches. I got rid of this tiny stitches, but I have no ties now anywhere. If I right click and do insert ties and do 4 right off the bat, now watch these numbers jump. I have 8 more here and 8 more here. So it completely obeyed me. I have 4 stitches for the tie on and 4 stitches for the tie off on the bigger item. And then I have 4 stitches for the tie on and 4 stitches for the tie off on the smaller item. So in the next video, I actually take you into Studio, and we do all of this into Studio. Yes, we still create an echo stitch around the bird, but we take that echo stitch into Studio and we convert that into our blanket stitch and then also into our placement stitch and our cut file. Now, if you're going to do all of this in Editor, you would, still need a cut file. And yes, you can make your cut file off of the blanket stitch and inflate it to 1.5, which I think I went over earlier. But you can also take this placement stitch, especially since it looks kind of nice now, and you can make your cut file off of that, especially since you have this section here. So, you would right click on the placement stitch, save cutting file, close contours, yes, no inflate. And then you could save it either as an FCM or an SVG, whichever way your cutting machine likes to use. The Brothers Scan and Cuts will use the FCM, and Crickets and other types of machines will take an SVG. So, and I think even the Brothers will take an SVG, but I'm not sure. So on the next video, I also talk you through hooping your quilt or your quilt block or whatever fabric you are using, and then how to go about, with setting it up and, making a crosshair and all that good stuff. We'll be adding crosshairs and other things in the next video. And, I'll talk about the placement line and so on, and the cutting file and the heat and bond light and everything like that. I think I talked about that towards the end of the next video. So the beginning of the next video basically starts you out in Editor and then takes you into Studio to do all of this. And then brings you then back to Editor. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you in the next video. Bye.